Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about volume and rectangular prisms. So you guys are really good at volume from 5th grade, but I wanted to just kind of do a refresher and then we'll really dive in. I found a video on YouTube that I thought was really great. So sit back, relax, enjoy the video, and then we'll get to your note sheet. It's only about a minute or two. Okay, so let me get it going. And here we go.
Rectangular prism, how to find their volume, and what to do when fractions are involved. You ready? Familiar with when we get those Amazon packages in the mail, that box is a right rectangular prism. And we are going to think about these kinds of figures in terms of their volume. Now, the volume of a rectangular prism is going to be dependent on its dimensions, in other words, its length, its width, and its height. So, for example, let's consider a rectangular prism with a length of 10 inches, a width of 4 inches, and a height of 7 inches. Now, we should have a basic understanding that the volume of a figure is a measure of the amount of space inside of that figure, or how much it can hold inside. Now, you may also know that in geometry, we express volume in cubic units. So, in other words, the volume represents the number of unit cubes it would take to fill the entire prism. And since the length, width, and height of the prism shown is measured in inches, our unit cube will have a length of 1 inch, a width of 1 inch, and a height of 1 inch. So if we were to take our rectangular prism and completely fill it from bottom to top with these 1 inch unit cubes, and then count the total number of cubes, that final total would represent the volume of the figure. Now, counting every single one of these cubes would take a very long time and is not the most efficient way to find volume. Luckily, rectangular prisms have certain properties that allow us to apply general rules for finding volume, and we're going to explore those rules now. So let's imagine that we only use those 1 inch unit cubes to fill the bottom layer of this rectangular prism. To fill this bottom layer, we would need 10 cubes along the length and 4 cubes along the width. So basically, we would have 4 rows of 10 1 inch unit cubes. So to figure out the total number of 1 inch unit cubes to cover this bottom layer, we can just multiply 10 times 4, and our product is 40. So we have 40 cubes comprising this bottom layer of the rectangular prism. Now, to determine how many of these 40 cube layers it would take to fill the entire prism, we have to look at the height, which is 7 inches, which means that we would need 7 layers of 40 cubes. So by multiplying 40 times 7, our product of 280 represents the total number of unit cubes it would take to fill this entire prism. So now we can conclude that the prism has a volume of 280 1 inch cubes, or 280 cubic inches. So now let's go back to thinking about some of those general rules that apply to finding the volume of a rectangular prism. So in that last example, we found volume by first figuring out the number of cubes in the base layer and then multiplying that value by 7, which represented the height of the figure.
All right, so why don't you go back to your note sheet, and we are going to be talking about rectangular prisms and their formula. So like it was said in the video, volume equals the base times the height. And we're using a capital B because when we're talking about base, we're talking about the area of the bottom. When he took that one row at the bottom, the area at the bottom. So there's a couple different formulas. You can see this B times H, which is going to be on our star. But I think what you have seen is that the volume equals the length times the width times the height. Length times width times height, which is also the same formula because length times width gives you the area of the bottom. So either formula is fine, and you actually need to know both of them. They mean the same thing, they're just represented a little bit differently. So let's look at this first one. What I want you to do is I do want you to kind of draw in this base here to show us that this is the bottom, and we're finding volume. So let's copy our formula. Volume equals the base times the height, where base is the area. So I have the area at the bottom in purple is going to be 15 times 12. So my volume equals my base, which is 15 times 12, times my height. Okay, well, I could go ahead and do 15 times 12, but I also know that my height is 10 feet. It's 10 feet tall. So this would really be 15 times 12 times 10, which would give you that same formula as length times width times height. Do you see how they kind of go together? Okay, so if I multiply these together, I'll go ahead and do it for you. 15 times 12 is 180. 180 times 10 will give us 1,800. Okay, and this is going to be feet cubed because they are cubic feet. All right, I want you to pause the video. I want you to try these next two problems, and then we'll come back together and we'll check them. So pause the video. All right, if you were stuck, here are the couple setups for you with these two. The volume on the first one was 6 times 6 times 6, and we were going to get 216 inches cubed. On the next one, we're doing the base times the height, so we're going to take that 16 times 25 and then multiply it by 17, which is going to give us 6,800 or 6,800 yards cubed. All right, give yourself a pat on the back if you got that right. I do want to move to these next type of problems because, of course, they're not always going to be that simple. Some of them are, and some of them aren't. So in this one, it says a block of cheese is in the shape of a rectangular prism. Ooh, block of cheese, yum. With a width of 2.5 inches and a height of 5 inches. The volume of the block of cheese, ooh, so this time the volume of the block of cheese is 75. It gives us our volume. It wants to know what is the length of the block of cheese. So when I do this, I know volume equals base times height. I also know that volume equals length times width times height. So when I also know volume equals length times width, you kind of have to decide which formula is going to work best for you. So I'm going to write what I know. I know the volume equals 75. I know the width is 2.5. I'm looking for the length. So it's easier for me to plug in this here, and I know that the length or the width is 2.5, so it'll go here. And I also know that the height is 5. I forgot to put that one. Height is 5. So I can plug it in like we have been doing into this equation here. 75 equals, I know 2.5 is my width times my height of 5, but I don't know the length of the cheese. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply 2.5 times 5 together. And if I do that, I'm going to end up getting that that's 12.5 times the length equals 75. And remember what we got really good at doing yesterday, dividing by 12.5 over onto both sides. And when you do that, you're going to get that the length is 6 inches. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to try these next two problems. Now, this next problem here and this problem here, they're kind of different. So I want you to try these two problems, give it a whirl, and then raise your hand if you have any questions, and we'll talk in a minute. Pause your video. Okay, these are the two answers that I got. So I need you to check, did you get these? And if not, you need to raise your hand and ask me or try again to see how I got these two answers. And if I just see these two answers on your paper without any work, I'm going to know you're cheating because you do need to do work for these. All right, so what I need you to do next, as long as you have a perfect page with work, you can try this next problem and then raise your hand and get it checked by me. And once you've gotten it all checked by me, you can go work on Moby Max. Good job, you guys.